So let me talk about Sean just quickly. Sean and I and the third person, Julia, are doing transportation, but we would have nothing to report tonight. We're still waiting for some additional data just to get that out of the way.
Okay, yeah, I know that the chief just sent stuff over like yesterday, so. Okay, cool. All right, so we'll get started. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 people. Okay, great. So I'm gonna start by going over the minutes from the last session. Did everybody get a chance to read the minutes? Okay. Any comments or suggestions, changes in the minutes? I thought they were pretty accurate and short, sweet, to the point. All right. I'm gonna ask for a motion to approve the minutes from September 26th. Get a second? John seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right. Minutes approved. Okay, so what I'd like to do is just go through each group's chapter and let you guys fill us in on what you did, what you discovered, what information you think we still need to come up with, what edits you made, just kind of see how the process goes, because this was a new thing we tried. So BJ already kind of gave us a briefing on transportation. And so we know that they don't really have an update. They just received their updated data from the police chief. So they're going to incorporate that. And Sean is not here, who's on that team. So we'll move to the next group, utilities. Was that Peter and Wendy and
John.
John? Okay.
We went through it pretty carefully, and in many cases we sort of noted where we'd like to see references or maybe expanded charts or even simply links to the other documents. And we did add, John, you can pipe in, they're talking about our chapter now, and Peter, you too. But we did add some comments and kind of concerns, because it seemed like water was a major focus, water and the electrical grid, and that in many ways drives the entire concept of a strategic plan. At least we thought so. So I don't know, John, Peter, do you want to add?
And related to that is that the WAC and their document they produced and support and gave to us is very comprehensive. And I know people in the community were concerned about making sure we use the most up-to-date information, and that we acquire, expert help in trying to design our water system, water plan, I guess you could say. And the WEC has done that. If you look at their notes and their sources for the information that they publish, it's phenomenal. And this is a collection of information that has been accrued for probably 25, 30 years of constant water analysis and data by multiple boards trying to get a handle on this, and using the information that we have, as well as people who are in the industry, like John Holman, for example, who's probably knows more about water than most anybody else. And all that information has been cobbled together to make this document. So I know there's concern in the community about this. They really should read that document and look at the sources that they have. We talked about earlier making sure we had enough sources in the document that we're producing, but some of this is just data that's unbelievably thick and rich. I don't know quite how do we do that. Simple footnotes would be one thing, but whether people would feel comfortable doing that or going to those sites, it's really quite overwhelming really easily. So I'm not sure how we handle all that data that's available.
Yeah, I thought that part of what we could do is add the ground and surface water management plan as an appendix to the comprehensive plan, because it really is a very comprehensive document, and it has a lot of its own citations that, are then also used in this overarching view that we're doing in the comprehensive plan. So I thought that by including it as an actual appendix, that would be beneficial for people. Lily? You're muted. Still muted.
Lily, we can't hear you. Can you hear us? You're muted.
Thank you.
There you go.
There you go. No, you just muted yourself again. Whatever you did, it unmuted and then muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. That's really funny. I didn't realize I touched it. There was a letter from Kim Nolan today from the Shelter Island Association, from the 10 neighborhoods about water and saying that since it's such an important part of the plan, how are we going to deal with it? Perhaps we need an extra chapter just on water, since it seems to weigh into almost every chapter that we have, and do we need an extra expert to look independently at it? I just want to call your attention to that since you're talking about water here. I don't know if everybody had a chance to see it, but I just opened it up.
Yeah, it's an email that I believe everybody saw back in April or something like that.
Oh.
But and then they resent it just this morning or this afternoon. But yeah, no, I don't actually think that we need an additional expert. I think the WAC's grounded surface water management plan really is a comprehensive study that they took years putting together. And it really is the basis of the natural environments chapter. So,
To
we'll-
natural environment.
right. I mean, that really is like the bedrock of that entire chapter is our water and our wetlands. And, so I don't know that we're going to need to hire another expert just to tell us about it. I think that it's really been vetted.
Thank you.
Concerning that email, most of the points in that email are covered really in that document. And it does take maybe some looking through it to find the information that they're concerned about, but it is there. The only point at the bottom where they want to have a community-wide discussion or coming up with a master plan of water, I understand the desire and the need for that. But as we go ahead and look at individual projects, that's where that will probably take place. To look at a blanket thing without even knowing where we're going in some ways, what our needs will arise in the next 10 years. We can make some assumptions at this point, which I guess we'll probably do at our end of this chapter. But the idea is that that's going to be an ongoing process, this community involvement in decision-making and planning. I think that we need to understand that the demand that that's being done now is maybe too soon. That's just my opinion.
Did you guys find anything that was like obviously missing from your chapter, or anything that you needed us to dig into deeper? I know that with the utilities, the electrical side of things, I had discussed with the Green Options Committee, and one of the recommendations that they made was to sort of have a special focus group in town hall consisting of the town engineer, a member from Green Options, possibly a board member and someone else who would actually get in touch with LIPA or PSC&G and figure out exactly what infrastructure we have coming to the island and kind of work on our resiliency plan, work on different ways that Shelter Island in and of itself could become a little more energy independent. And in times of crisis, so to speak, like a hurricane, if we get our power knocked out for a couple of weeks, how would we make that work? What is our backup plan? How independent are we in that sense? And so that's kind of something that I was going to work on come the new year with Green Options and the town engineer, just kind of trying to figure out some ways to do that.
One of the options we did talk about was the access to internet service.
Mm-hmm.
And it looked like that section might need some updating, or maybe a more serious plan to explore bringing other providers on to create a little competition to Optimum.
Yeah, that would be great, right?
Yes,
Aren't these action items?
yes,
Yes,
What you mentioned, Meg, and, drawing up a resiliency plan is not for the comp plan so much, right?
correct. It would be an action item.
Yeah.
But there was some basic information that we did want to include here, like exactly how many power lines do we have coming into the island? How many users are there? What does our backup power look like in the event of like a yacht pulls out our main power line? Something like that, someone's anchor drags and we have an oops. Just looking into things like that and kind of collaborating with the powers that be. So we have some solid information on our current status.
mhm. Good.
So is that part of the subgroup's remit to follow up on that so that, this chapter gets, towards conclusion?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah. And I believe it was Steve Saunders, who's on the Green Options, who has a long history of working in this industry, who was kind of help us sort that out.
Hi, it's Benjamin. One quick question. So Wendy, you said your group was considering expanding the paragraphs around internet access.
Mm-hmm.
You're muted. Sorry.
Oh, it's just the action item.
Yeah, we added some comments, or we commented upon it, but the question was what things need some attention, and we wanted to highlight the electrical grid, but also the internet provider structure as something that needed to be considered, in addition, of course, to just making sure we have sound data on the water.
I mean, traditionally, internet access is considered a service, but as time goes on, it's actually a utility at this point because we all cannot live without it. Like we can't live out without water, electricity. So, all right, can't wait to see what it looks like.
That's why it's in the chapter.
It's more, yeah, it's at this point, it's more of an action item. Should the town consider exploring establishing a municipal internet service is sort of the question that was
Yeah.
posed. So that would
We
take
act,
research.
sorry, Megan.
No, you're good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Oh,
I was
let me
just gonna say,
add
we
that,
actually suggested putting it as a consideration as a utility and economic development. So if you guys cover it there, then we can either take it out of our piece or keep it in.
I think we should leave it,
Yeah.
I think.
it in
the
both,
items-
yeah.
I think it should be listed wherever it comes up,
Mhm.
so I wouldn't take it out.
Right.
I
They
agree.
also say, everybody, you have to be on camera. I think this is part of the new rules. That as long as the meeting is in session, you have to have your camera on.
Thanks, BJ. I didn't even think of that.
Yeah. Oh, Petra, taking a walk.
Let me go put a shirt on.
Me
I had
too.
an issue
No.
with a dog I had to take care of, so I
Okay.
decided to make a protest pee in the corner of on my bush I have in my office here. Doesn't like
For a minute, I thought you had Christmas trees up
He
already.
decided to say, I'm gonna mark that because it's been outside all summer and I don't recognize it and crap. You want a dog? Anybody want a dog? Very cute, except for Ranger said.
Okay, so overall with the utilities chapter, if we just fill in a few of those holes, just that information on, what we currently have as far as electricity goes, you guys felt comfortable with it?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things we recommended was that there are a couple maps that should be PDF clickable so you can actually read them, because what's included there is really unreadable.
It's tiny.
Yeah, I mean, those are
Right.
minor suggestions for the final version, and they might be intended anyway.
Yeah, I just kind of tossed those in there so that we knew they existed and we had them.
Mhm.
But also, if you guys come up with ideas for additional maps or things that you think we need a visual for as you go through your chapters, let us know.
Okay.
One thing with the
In the
Silverline
comments.
GIS, it has so much depth to those documents, those different maps and different overlays. I don't know quite how we reference that. But again, as far as the cisterns and runoff and all these different aspects of water and the wells and the septic system placement, it's all there. So it just has to be like an interactive document. There really can't be a paper document because there's no way you could show all those different that information.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, we probably have that option now, whereas back in 94, it really wasn't viable. But at this point, we could probably come up with an interactive online version of the comp plan where you could click the link and it brings you to a larger picture of whatever that thing
Right.
is, or it could link you to the document. So like for reference documents and things like that.
Right.
So by the time we're done, we could probably have a relatively interactive document.
That's exciting.
Right. Okay, the next chapter, is everyone comfortable with this one so far? Like, look it over, make your comments. I'm gonna go through it and kind of incorporate everything. And then let's go to chapter 7, community services and facilities. Who was on that one? Jay, you were on that one, right?
Yes, as far as I know, we never met.
Okay. Let's see. It was you, Rebecca, and Joanne, right? I think the 3 of you were on that chapter.
There were some good comments in the body of the chapter, though, I believe.
Mhm.
I
Yeah, I
helped a
put
little
some
bit with
comments
clean,
back in. It's just that we
Yeah.
never got together as a group.
yeah, cleaned up library. That looks really good, I think.
Mhm.
Not cleaned it up. I want to say we updated and refreshed the data.
Right.
Trying to think of what else was going on in that chapter. But yeah, absent a meeting, there was a fair amount of commentary and headway made, I think.
Is it possible to question, is it possible to see these drafts as they're in process? I mean,
On SharePoint.
with
They're all
our,
in the
oh, they're
SharePoint.
available now. I didn't know that.
Yes. Oh,
Okay.
yes, they're all in SharePoint.
Okay.
I can share my screen and show
Yeah,
you
that would be
some of-
very helpful.
what they've gone through.
Yeah.
Okay. Can everyone see?
You make it a little, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I'm trying to make it a little bigger. Is that better?
Yeah, that's
Much.
great.
Okay.
So
I'm
just a point of clarification, do you want the rest of us to kind of go through all of these chapters as well?
Yeah, definitely look them over. I know we've all seen these before, but now that people have really focused in and made deeper comments, do one more review. I'm going to go through and kind of try to incorporate everything. And if I see that there's questions that have been unanswered, I'll try to answer them. And then we'll kind of have like a more clean semi-final draft. And then these will all be discussed in the next public workshop
Okay.
in November. Let's see. So the school district had a lot of, I'm sorry if I make you nauseous, I'm scrolling. So the library information here that was updated is in red. So some of the statistics and data were updated. The budget, because that I believe was just voted on and approved. So that information has been updated. The number of visits, checkouts, number of times people have logged into the Wi-Fi. So pretty much how frequently and intensely the services are being used is all kind of captured here.
So Meg, I don't see the comments I put in here.
Show,
Mm,
show comments or hit,
Oh, I have all the comments up. They should be,
I remember one of yours was, Jay, can this, budget number be correct? It's as big as the highway or something. Was
Well,
that one
yeah,
of them? that you-
the budget for the library exceeds the entire town's public works budget. How can that be?
Right, and it is correct. That's double checked.
Mhm.
So I took your comment out, after I checked it. And that's why I put in per the September 29, 2022 public notice of the vote.
Okay,
Okay, because I wanted you to know where it came from,
right.
right? Okay, so,
It just
Whatever
seems something's out of whack if that's the case.
uh,
Are you saying we need a bigger highway budget? Because nobody's gonna like
Yeah.
that.
No, I understand, but it's a realistic thing when we talk
Yeah.
about infrastructure and taking care of the things that we own.
Mhm.
We have one building that has a higher budget than the entire town's public works budget for buildings, town buildings.
Yeah.
Not that I'm saying that this isn't, a proper budget. What I'm saying is that we don't have enough money to take care of the infrastructure that we have.
I understand completely.
yeah, it is the only library in Suffolk. I think they say less than $1 million. A big portion of it, of course, is payroll. But then they have fees and other things to, they have to buy the books, that sort of thing. Cost of doing business, cost of goods sold.
Let's see.
How much was the budget dollar wise?
755,000,
Raised by taxes.
almost 756,000.
Yeah, that's by taxes. 926 is expenditures.
So it loses money.
No, the rest is raised by fundraising and grants and
Oh, okay.
fines when you're late with your library book. Come on, it goes into the pit kitty.
It's 5 cents.
Right, although they add up.
Okay. And then they talked about some of the problems they're having with the library due to like lack of space. The library actually gets a lot of usage. For a small place, there are people who really, really benefit from it. I know that a lot of the students go there after school. There's a lot of people use the library. Let's see. Jay, here's one of your comments. It's your public work. Okay. Facilities. I think that the a capital, you say here, we need a capital assets plan going forward for all of our equipment and facilities and things like that. And I know that Highway does have a plan for their maintenance and replacement of their vehicles and their equipment. I know, BJ, we've discussed a facilities master plan for the center of town and maintenance of all those buildings and projections for the future and the best way to handle that. And that is really, that should be an action item at the end of this chapter if it's not already, the establishment of a facilities master plan and long-term planning. Because that we definitely need to do. A lot of our buildings are aging and in need of significant maintenance. So we need to start planning for that future.
And there is a capital plan. I mean, it's a fairly extensive spreadsheet, right? And, Amber just consulted with Brian and Joe Fenora, the town engineer, is in on these discussions as well. And it does outline, what asset is getting attention in the near term, 0 to 5, then the medium term, and then it goes as far as 40 years. Now, that's that's a wink. The 40-year, but you put it in there, and then as you get, tick off the years, that comes down and becomes more of a reality, and you can check it, have a more of a real number in there. So I think we're doing pretty well with that, but you don't, Jay.
You muted, Jay.
No, I think that we're behind as far as what we're doing on the planning of our town assets.
Mhm. I think, yeah, I think especially when it comes to the buildings. Yeah, I agree with you. So for the recycling center and managing yard waste and eventually our wet garbage, I have Green Options helping us come up with some ideas for how to manage that, because we do have the landfill that we currently use shutting down in 2 years. So we're gonna have to come up with an alternate solution. And you know, ways of reducing our waste is the best way to save us in the long run. But trying to come up with like programs and plans for how to do that effectively is something that I have, you know, Green Options is looking into, and there's a few other groups that are looking into that too, even just up and down the East End, because they're going to be facing the same problem that we are with the landfill shutting down. So we're looking at Southold to see how they're going to handle it, and just kind of trying to learn from our neighbors. So as we get new ideas, I'll throw them in here. Let's see.
But just be aware that we're up against the volume, you know, our volume quantity and volume for green vegetative waste and organics.
Right.
You know, and as far as, you know, working towards build out, that's only going to make it even more difficult. You know, when we have neighboring properties that maybe we should look at.
Mhm. To expand the recycling center, you're saying?
Correct. I know back in the day, you know, Meg, you were talking about something with the pit with your dad.
Mhm.
You know, I think those are talks that probably should still continue. There's still a vast amount of sand that's underneath, you know, our property that can't be mined because
Right.
we're dumping on the top of it. That's an asset that's buried down there.
Mhm.
You know, that should be looked at. And then there's, you know, probably a portion of the property to the south of our facility that probably should be investigated for a purchase and possible expansion.
Yeah. We'll look into it. That may have already been purchased by someone else.
That's a
Um,
shame.
Yeah.
Is that the old gun range? Is that what you're talking about?
No, there's another private property to the south of our property that's it's a long skinny piece, so it'd be a subdivision, but it would still give us a fair amount of extra space.
But yeah, Jay will look into that, see what's available. Let's see.
Could I ask a question about this?
Yeah.
Since all the East End towns are facing the same closure of this facility, and you mentioned, you know, you'll be consulting with them, but would it make sense for us to collaborate and come up with kind of a shared solution?
In some, it depends. It depends on kind of the solution. I know that in Southold, they're actually working on a relatively large scale composting program in coordination with some of the farms. And they're sort of doing a trial to see how that's working. And that might be something that we may be able to join in on. But I'm not sure yet. It's going to depend on kind of how it goes and, you know, whether they find that it's working or not. Because there's a lot of maintenance to that, making sure that people are composting the correct materials. It's a process, but I have people who are kind of staying on top of it and following up, and will keep us posted on how their projects are going.
So Meg, maybe there's some confusion. The facility that's shutting down is for construction debris. That's not compostable type materials.
Right.
Okay.
But they also take our wet garbage, I believe, too, like all the bags, like our bagged garbage.
Yeah, so that goes to a contractor. As far as
right.
I know, that is most likely being either resorted and sent probably to Covanta for power generation.
Okay. Yeah, so we'll look into it more and figure out exactly what we need to reduce.
Just a quick question. If we expand, Jay, if we expand the green waste and maybe go into composting, do we have to worry about leaching nitrates into the aquifer
So
as
we're
things decompose?
right. So we're monitored at the groundwater monitoring is happening up there. I believe we do it twice a year. And we receive reports, and the DEC receive reports when they're generated at the same time. So we've been monitored, I believe since we were capped in the 90s. That's been happening.
And we have to test, correct me if I'm wrong, but we have to test the like the topsoil and stuff that we generate.
Correct.
We have to test all that for the DEC.
Yep.
So that they know if it's contaminated, if there's, high level of pesticides or herbicides or, whatever, but that gets tested on a regular basis.
Okay,
Yes,
can any of that construction waste be utilized by Covanta and power generation? Like the wood, for example, not necessarily the concrete or steel, but
Yeah, that can be, as far as I know, but a part of that would probably be size reduction,
right.
where we'd reduce it down in size, put it into to a walking floor trailer or dump trailer and haul it to them.
but we would need a piece of equipment that would chip it, chop it up, whatever it may be to do the, and or separate stuff, right?
Exactly.
On our
Correct.
end.
So they would have a magnet on it that would pull the metals out.
Mhm.
Typically, hopefully the cement would get pulled out in the separation by the machine before you load it. Would go through the machine and then it would get loaded into a trailer and hauled.
Mhm.
So that would all be born out of a municipal agreement that you'd have to get with Covanta. That they would take it.
Is this something that you think would be a individual town process, or is this something that towns could join together on this?
Right. I talked to Brian about it a little bit. It almost sounded to him like the towns are going to throw their hands up and pass it maybe over to contractors. And then, but the problem is that when you do that, now you're at their mercy again. Where right now, I think, Brian's doing a really good job of controlling what the costs are by working the markets, getting us to the best deal for the materials. So I think once they go up, you're going to see, he feels the cost of materials are going to maybe more than double, and they're already super high now. Could be much as $400 a ton to get rid of material.
Yeah, I mean,
Think
because
about that when you go to throw your couch out. Might cost you more to throw your couch out than buy it.
right. Right, because in order to break it down, we'd have to get additional machinery. And it would be more time and labor. And I believe that in order to do that, you also have to have an enclosed space to mitigate any airborne debris, any particles, dust, fragments that would become airborne. So there's you'd actually have to set up kind of a processing plant for breaking the materials down into a size that they would accept. So it's a rather large process. It would be an expensive undertaking for us to establish on our own. So it's a matter of weighing the possibilities. But we'd have to, build another building. We'd have to have the equipment in that building, and it's a big undertaking.
It's a lift.
It's a lift. We might have to do it, but it is a larger conversation. So that should be an action item.
Well, for the town, it's going to end up being a big action item.
It will be.
I mean, the fact that the facility is efficient in the way it operates,
Mhm.
is a sign of our community. We don't have junk all over the place.
Yeah.
We don't have dumping down at the dead ends. I think the one thing I had in there somewhere though was creation of a municipal waste committee.
To be an action item,
Yeah,
if
that's,
we all agree.
I
Yeah.
think it should be. Oh, yeah, here we go. Solid Waste Management Committee. Business owners, residents, municipal leaders.
I didn't know whether I should put those things in the thing or leave them like this as comments.
You can put
I'll-
them in and just track your changes, no?
Yeah, absolutely. But I'll take this and I'll incorporate it as an action item. It won't seem to let me copy it, but let me see. Let's see if I can do it. Don't get dizzy. I'm scrolling. Sorry. Stick it at the end.
Okay.
All right. And I'll format that. All right, and then we had some comments on the Legion. Confirm the dates. Let's see. I'm gonna go down. So the rec program. So she told us, I spoke to Emily and she gave us the information that it's typically 10 to 15 students per session for each program. So they're pretty well attending considering the number of students we have on the island. I wasn't sure if we needed more specific data or if you were looking for something a little more, I don't know, like for the last 5 years or something. I know some of these programs kind of took a hiatus during COVID, so the data may not really be there long term, but it's kind of a snapshot of what currently happens. So town facilities, projects and initiatives, we're waiting on some information back from Jim about the grants committee, because that has a
I'll
pretty-
update.
do you
Yeah,
have that?
I'll update that. I'll put it in. I do have it now. It's
Oh,
part of the
okay.
budget. It's in the budget. Yep. I'll
Oh,
just make
right.
myself a note. Yeah.
Thank you. My brain. Let's see. Down. So then this is really just all of our different kind of programs on the island. Oh, here we go. I'm sorry, I want to figure out where the comments start. Oh, all right. So there was a bit of a back and forth about whether or not this is a quality of life or an economic development kind of question. Because there's a comment in here that it's more difficult to deal. What's more difficult to deal with are the larger social and economic trends that increasingly make it hard for young people, working families, and retirees of modest means to remain on the island year-round, resulting in a loss of youth, commitment, and volunteer energy that helps community life grow and thrive. And there was debate on whether or not this is a quality of life factor or more of an economic trend. I argue that it's kind of both. I guess the question is, should we keep it or not?
I think it's editorializing, which happens in a lot of places, particularly when it has anything to do with housing. And I think that, it's a very hot climate right now, but I think that we really should, it's for a conclusion. It's not directly ascertainable under the topic. So I don't think it belongs here. If we want to put this together with something else, it's a different story.
I think it's a fact. I don't think it's
It's
editorializing.
not necessarily a fact. The reason you may not have younger people and families is because it's so boring here, as several people told me. It's not only the matter of affordable housing. These are questions. I mean, this goes.
It doesn't say that. It
TJ,
doesn't
you
say
and I
affordable.
have gone, I know, in this case, it doesn't say it. I'm thinking of
Okay.
things in other chapters that
I'll be
have
quiet.
sort of snuck in.
It's good.
Meg and BJ, this might be a good place to interject. I think some data that, Ben, Lily, and I met several times, and I think there's some data that would be helpful for all the chapters, just to make sure that we as a committee are fully grounded. One is just, what is the population growth decade on decade? So literally just using census data to say, this was the population in 1990, 2000, 2010, 2020, right?
Okay.
Here's what it was. It was, 2,300, and now we're at, 32, whatever, but is that the actual number given the pandemic? So I think there's that. I think there's what are the age ranges of the population? So does it support this? We had basically these 6 items, which I think would be helpful for us all, just so that we're grounded, right?
Yeah, so
From
you
an
have a
economic-
baseline.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that would be really helpful if we can get sub-segments of population. And I know this is the more difficult thing around full-time year-round residents, part-time residents. We now seem to have year-round part-time residents, and then seasonal residents. Again, I don't know if we can actually segment those, but just some general indication of where's the population grown to, of what segments.
Right.
I think that's helpful for us all. And I'll send you guys all of this. Jobs growth would be great. I mean, we sort of extrapolated data. If you look at the 94 plan, there were, I think, like 750 jobs were, now up past 1,050 as of the last data. So, if, you've got maybe more jobs growth than you have population growth. And just where are employers? We've been doing some interviewing of people. Ben went and met with the Chamber of Commerce the other week, like, where are employers hiring from? What the other data point would be the unemployment rate over or at least recent past, because, and how does that employment rate relate to jobs growth? And is there a possible mismatch of skills for what employers are looking for versus the skills that, and the workforce that is available? And what does that suggest for education? Right? Or just where we're sourcing, people from, and what do employers need to do in order to attract the talent? We know from conversations that, obviously housing is something big that employers, need to look at. There's maybe other kinds of incentives that I think Shelter Island employers have been offering that non-island employers may not need to do. I think that's important to look at. The other thing that, we have some data on business types, the ERSI data that was in there. I think that's interesting to suggest where are the jobs going. The other thing that we thought would be helpful is, what is median household income done over the decades? I think traditionally Shelter Island, if I'm not mistaken, median household income is higher on average than it is for both Greater New York Metro and Suffolk County. Again, what does that suggest from an economic development perspective? So we tried to, and I'll send you all of the things that we worked on. We actually put it into a separate document, just a quick Word document. So I'll
Petra,
send
are you
guys
talking
that.
about chapter 6 now?
Yes,
Yeah, I
economic.
don't,
But it.
But I think some of these data points flow across everything. And I just thought it would be helpful for us to just all be very confident in the numbers that we're collectively agreeing to, and I just think some of these are germane to all chapters.
Sounds good. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So it gets at that comment a little bit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
yes.
That's
Yep,
a
absolutely.
roundabout way of saying, I think that would be helpful.
So
Mhm.
just back to this paragraph that we were initially concerned with. If there's data in your table and your information that you have come up with that supports the statements there, then it should be there. If there's not data supports it, it shouldn't be there. So
Correct.
let's put this, keep it highlighted, go back, gather the data, double check, and then make our decision after that point.
Yeah.
You could also just simply add see chapter 6 for, page so-and-so.
Kind of like that. I kind of like that.
See chapter 6, see chapter on housing, see chapter,
Mhm.
whatever.
Yeah.
It's legitimate.
Okay. Ah. I'll remember that. Okay. Sorry, it is skipping and I don't know why. All right, so we've touched that, that's done. All right, solid waste management, we're lacking space. I'm sorry, I don't know why it keeps skipping.
Mhm.
Okay. Multi-year capital plan and asset management system. Jay, you have a good note, hire professionals to help with this. Don't just base it on volunteers. I agree.
Yeah, there's professional companies that do that. That's what we need.
Mhm. Okay. I'm just gonna see if there are any additional. So the recommendation to move the Fit Center off school grounds where public presence is problematic for school administration. We'll definitely look into some options for that. It's a good action item. Facilities master plan again. Okay. Yeah, and then I just had a question about, there was an action item to improve the bowling lanes at the Legion. And I was wondering if that's actually a town property, is a town property. It's just a rented.
Not that part of it, I don't think.
I don't think it is.
The lanes.
I don't know.
Yeah, I think that the town just has the top. And, has leased the top on a 99-year lease and the bottom is still with the Legion, I think.
Okay, we'll sort that out.
So there is a master plan for that.
Mhm.
My wife was involved in that. I don't know what year, 90 something. They had a plan to expand the bowling alley to 4 lanes. Create I believe, a youth and senior center and maybe even the fit center at one point on that facility. And then a bunch of shared spaces
Mhm.
with the town space. All those plans are hanging in Brian's office on the plans rack.
All right, I'll ask Brian if I can see those.
Yeah.
So someone asked about a manual for new homeowners. And there is one that actually exists. The CAC, the Conservation Advisory Committee, has a manual out that really goes through everything you need to know as a homeowner from like A to Z. And I think it would be beneficial to make an abridged version with maybe a QR code to the longer version because it's a significant document. But that does exist. So I'll leave it in here as an action item, just as something to remind us to kind of make that more accessible to the general public. Okay, and then we have some more maps that have been added. But that's it. Was there anything really big or glaring that needed to be added or researched for this chapter? Any big questions looming? No? Okay. All right, then I say we go on to economic development. Ben, Petra, and Lily.
And Ben.
Yeah,
or-
Yes.
so, yeah, so we mentioned, I just mentioned the additional data items, right?
Yep.
Population growth from 1990 to the most recent census. So I'll send you the areas that we wanted to collect additional data around because we think it's really important.
Okay.
So
Can
we
you
focused
share-
on a couple, I'm sorry,
Can you share your screen, Petra?
I can do that. Hold on.
One key bit of information that we're hoping to end up with, when I'm not sure we can, is the breakdown between full-time jobs and part-time jobs. But
That's gonna be really hard to get.
yeah,
I don't know if it actually exists unless we literally call everybody. But I'll see if I can come up with some information.
Yeah, so ideally, these would be the areas that we'd love to see more data around. Most of this, I think, should exist.
Petra, any chance you can make that bigger?
Yes.
And it's not just more data, so that in population, as we note, there are conflicting, reports, there's estimates, there's the question of how to handle the pandemic year census figures. So we need to really have a view of what we're dealing with here, how secure we think it is, how flexible the numbers are. But I think that's a very important point for the whole document.
Yeah, I think we just want to make sure everyone's working off of the same information. Again, this isn't just related to economic development, right? So we'll go ahead and send that in. We basically worked off the 94 plan for some of this verbiage. We talk a little bit about population growth. Obviously, we need some census information there. I think we acknowledge the population is complex here, clearly. The good news is it seems like jobs are increasing. Most of them are related to, the service tourism industry. And, sort of the top three are kind of, services, tourism, real estate construction, and then public administration. One of the things we did talk a little bit about, and I'm trying not to go through this that quickly, but there is a hidden economy here that isn't accounted for, which does relate to short-term rentals. And there's a job sector there that I'm not sure how we would actually get data around it, but clearly there's property management, there's maintenance, and there's, cleaning, and I'm sure there are other things, right? So I know I believe the town has information on number of short-term rentals. So somehow we may be able to extrapolate something, but this is data that is not accounted for in jobs that I'm aware, at least, right? So I think it is something to consider. There's obviously also, a knock-on effect of short-term rentals taking out housing stock from year-round rentals.
Right.
So that has an implication on employment because, right, it's part of the cycle. And this is not a unique Shelter Island problem by any stretch, right? We all know that short-term rentals everywhere have taken housing stock out of full-time rentals.
Petra, you don't think any of that is captured in data for hospitality workers? None of it,
Not 100% sure. I think it's just something we wanted to raise, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure it is not completely accounted
Right,
for,
No.
right?
Yeah, I think that there are a
Yeah.
lot of people who as a third or fourth side job do manage some of these properties. And then I know that there are some of the cleaning ladies who are also hired to clean after an Airbnb changes hands. So I know that some of it's an extension of a pre-existing business. And I know some of it is an extra side hustle for people, but I don't know the percentage of that, it's really hard to hash out.
Yeah. It's just,
Also-
I think we wanted to make sure it was at least acknowledged, and again,
Yeah.
it's not a unique Shelter Island situation. This is
Right.
any town USA now.
Also, you should be aware of the Suffolk County Department of Taxation keeps track of all the income that short-term rental people make. It has to be reported by law. And as an owner myself, I submit my quarterly statements to them with my payments, so they know how much we're making, and that figure is available.
Okay, good to know,
But
John.
yeah,
Very
but to
good.
Patria's, to Patria's point, we do have a fair number of unregistered, I believe, short-term rentals.
Well,
Yes,
they would then also then be breaking the law with Suffolk County, and that's
Oh, yeah.
becomes another a legal issue that maybe they should step in and do something about it. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Enforcement.
yeah.
Mm.
There we go.
Yeah. Mm.
we've
Right.
also, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, another area that there's likely some growth in is around sort of this home health care, given, again, the aging of the population and services needed. So again, BJ and Meg, whether that data is captured in the jobs numbers, we're not sure, but I think it's at least worth, noting as like the area of growth, and whether it's in a Shelter Island job or
Again,
not.
there are 4 companies on the East End that provide staff for that.
Mhm.
I think by contacting those companies and asking how many of their people work on Shelter Island, you can come up with some figures for that.
Okay, great suggestion. Thank you.
Right, yeah.
Yep. We looked at obviously the business locations on island. That's pretty consistent. Again, noted there is no formal relationship for the town in terms of economic development. Ben spent some time with the Chamber of Commerce, who have indicated they will, definitely entertain further conversations with us. We did note the, recent commercial activity and change of ownership that has been happening, as well as some new, businesses that have started on island recently. There's obviously the whole notion of e-commerce increase. We obviously saw that increase even more during the pandemic. That has an implication for, economic development. Clearly, we've talked about the incubator space before. The library was looking at doing that. We concur that planned development, I think everyone on this committee is probably everyone that we spoke to, everyone wants to make sure that the development is planful and not done in a, independent or isolated fashion, certainly taking into account, obviously, the environment that we have and things that people appreciate about the island. So many of these, we just modified some of the action items noted. I would note one of the items we added was the consideration of the center as a mixed use development. I know that's something that we had discussed as a committee. We added the internet as a utility here, which would be not only beneficial for economic development, but also education, town administration, looking towards the future of maybe autonomous vehicles someday. Right. Looking at non-town administration chapters. I think, Meg, you had brought this up last time, SCORE, and maybe some, again, you've got a good amount of experience on island of retirees and part-time residents, who I'm sure, as well as full-time residents, that would provide mentoring. I think we need to continue to explore these, what remote work might do for the island in terms of increased year-round population and just what kind of services are needed. And we didn't go into the zoning piece, so that's kind of where we came out. Ben and Lily, what would you add? But I think, from our perspective, there is some additional data that we'd like to have, as well as additional conversations with the chamber, new business owners, et cetera.
I think that one of the things that we began to realize as we were doing this is that the sort of traditional distinction between year-round residents, part-timers, doesn't really characterize what's been going on here, that we've really got at certain times in the year, we've got, as Petra said, part-timers who are here year-round. Whether this is mostly a phenomena from the pandemic period, whether it's going to stay, we can't say, but we've got a lot of different groups using this island, which gives us some challenges, but also a lot of economic opportunity. So I think when we realize the large scope of who's here and the different needs they have, it's a much more interesting picture economically.
Petra, could you upload that file to your folder?
Yeah, put it in a SharePoint chapter, or I can do it if you want to send it to me. I can just upload it into that chapter.
Yep, I'll put it in there.
Obviously, we're not quite finished and got a lot
Yeah.
of writing to do, but if you want to see where it is now, I don't have a problem with that, but.
Yeah, well, because then I can add some of the data. I'll do some digging into the census and I can get you some of that information. That's kind of one of the bits I'm working on for this next month.
I mean, one of the things, I don't know, that I think we're running into, it's hard to get hard, non-anecdotal information about how people run their businesses.
Mhm.
Yeah, I have a friend who has a handyman once a week, and that's a side hustle for him.
Mhm.
And his regular job is even a side hustle. I mean, these things go down layers.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, that's the way a lot of the people who have grown up here and live here full time, and like if the island is the basis of your economy, like if your personal economy, your personal finance, you get creative. And so I know a lot of people who have like 3 side hustles and 1 like legit job, or they have more side hustles than, 9 to 5s. I mean, people get creative, and it's really hard to capture that creativity in a statistic.
Right. So I
But
think
they
that's where
serve-
the context is important, and we know that there's a lot of data that isn't captured. But somehow we have to take it into account, right?
Yeah, yeah. It's nothing wrong with using anecdotal as long as you say it's anecdotal.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't
Exactly.
present it as hard, but just it's kind of like a historical thing here.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I wonder if there's a model out there that does precisely that for communities that are tourist-based and seasonally based, like you think Block Island or Nantucket or something where you've got like a lot of work happening, but if you live there full-time, you've got to, as you said, cobble together all these other jobs just to
Right.
make it through.
Yeah,
Right.
and they change depending on the season.
Right.
Because during like a solid scallop season, that's a whole side business for somebody that may not exist in a bad year. So, there's a lot of that kind of industry too.
Yeah. Well, and
Um,
there's obviously people who work off island too, that live on island,
Right, exactly.
full-time
Right.
year-round residents, right? This is again sort of this category because you now have year-round part-time residents who may work on the island 2 days a week and work elsewhere 3 days a week.
Right.
So there's then the whole question of, impact of remote work, and there just isn't that much data yet.
Right. Well, because I think that really came about with COVID on a
Right.
more significant level.
Exactly.
Before that, it was mostly people who were kind of in their retirement who were consulting. And
Yeah.
so then it was kind of an as needed kind of basis, but now it's become more of a typical job to work remotely. So,
Yep.
I don't think we have to be right. I think you just have to nail a trend here.
Yeah.
That it, a big wash, a big wave came with the pandemic. Some of that will recede, but some will remain. And I mean, I think maybe that's as much as, and then in 5 years, when it's clearer,
Yeah.
what remained, and it gets updated, it gets updated.
mhm.
There we go.
Living document, remember?
Okay. Does anyone else have any notes on this chapter? No. Okay. So I'm gonna look into some of the data for you guys.
Meg, just one thing.
Yes, Jay.
Do we have a list of I guess what you would call essential businesses? that we want to see, like the grocery store, car repair, banks, the post office, hardware stores, those type of.
Well, the Chamber of Commerce,
But even
for
for,
members of the chamber, they're part of that record.
Yeah, but there are a lot of businesses that are not members of the chamber.
Yeah.
A lot.
But they
Like,
also have a secondary list of other businesses that
And then
would
there are
be part of the
businesses,
chamber.
and there are businesses that are not listed at all. I mean, I think of this island as a busy hum of bees. I mean, everybody is busy trying to earn money one way or another, and we hardly have a grasp of it, that we can put on paper in a chart.
No, that's true, but Jay's asking about essential businesses. and-
Essential, well, I don't,
Well,
you
what do
know,
you
I
call
don't-
essential? But
we don't have them listed specifically. We have them grouped as, not as specifically as we can.
the reason I just asked because I went through the Southold plan, looking at what they had in there.
Mhm.
And they had identified, the essential type businesses that it's important to keep in your community.
Right,
When the banks were looking at pulling off Shelter Island and we weren't going to have a bank on the island, that became a big deal. And maybe those are things that you want to identify.
yeah.
that's a good point.
Yeah, what we have is a list of kind of all the businesses on the island. We have 2 auto repair, we have,
Good.
2 architects, 1 accountant. So we kind of have that list, but maybe we should prioritize them as, essential for the functioning of a community. And then sort of, we could break it down from
Right.
there, kind of
I will-
prioritize them.
I
You
did,
add
look
that?
at I did go through the Southold list also, Jay, and there are many categories we have on this island that are not listed, designers, interior decorators, and like home health care workers, all of this kind of, there are many, many categories that are not on our list, and to get an exhaustive list
I
would
would
take,
consider all of those essentials though.
no, I'm
Well, yeah,
just
Jay-
saying a list of entire things. No, we don't, they're certainly not all essential, but home health care workers might be considered essential.
I
in
think
an
Jay's point
aging
is we need a
population.
paragraph, but
Yeah.
Jay's point maybe is a paragraph delineating what we do have that would be considered essential, and then an action item that says, let's keep them. I
think
think
we
that's what you're
noted-
saying.
I think
know,
we
that's-
only
that's
have one
great.
gas station now.
Right,
Yeah,
Right? When we got one gas station, but you also have one repair station that does inspections. And he's about ready to go, I think. So we're pretty much looking at everybody having to go up finally get the car inspected at this point.
Do you have any other notes about concern about essential businesses? Other than the cars, Jay,
The ones that kind of, a grocery store, pretty important to keep on the island.
right?
Car repair, banks. I don't know what happens with the post office. I guess that always stays. A hardware store. I'm just a couple notes that I draw without looking at their plan. I just off the top of my head thought we should
But
consider.
also,
to keep in mind.
if you have a
Transportation.
supermarket, you also need a specialty food market, but
Well, we used to have a grocery store.
Yeah.
That has to, next to, in the center of town, that has to do with vacant property issue on the island.
yeah.
yeah. And a certain amount of restaurant stock that needs to be open year round.
Mhm. Right,
Maybe some that aren't all high end.
right,
Yeah, no, absolutely.
yeah. Like a spectrum of pricing.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, so we'll upload your document into the SharePoint. I'm gonna go through some of the data because I do have some of this data kind of already pulled out. Like I did go through census for a little while and worked on that. So I'll get that together in a more cohesive fashion and I'll add it to your chapter. So our next public workshop is November 18th from 7 to 9. Hopefully we'll, be in person. Let's see, that is going to be on November 18th. So that's going to be a Friday.
Before Thanksgiving. right?
Yeah, the
not
week
here.
before.
I'm, not- I,
I'm definitely not here. I'm at a wedding in Mexico.
Okay,
I'm not sure that I'll be here.
okay.
I can try to be here, but I'm. not sure that
What was
I'll-
the date again, Meg?
November 18th.
Okay.
So I'll just send out a reminder email to everybody. You can check your calendars, get back to me, let me know if it works. And then we can move forward from there. And I'll see if we have to have a quorum to have kind of a public workshop really to collect public feedback. I would think we'd want one, but I'll just double check the legality of that. Because, you know, it would be nice to engage the public as much as possible. Especially since after that, then we're getting into November, the holiday season, you know, we've got the Thanksgiving and then you've got Christmas and New Year's and next thing you know, it's 2023.
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
How do we stand with the consultant?
March.
That's a good question.
Yeah, so once the budget is approved, we'll have close to 90,000 in there for a consultant. So that'll help. And then grants come up in January, that cycle starts. So I'm hoping to put out RFPs at the beginning of the new year for consultants.
Okay.
And then hopefully get them on board as soon as we can. The data analysis or the census analysis, Lily, because you sent me an email about that, was not in the contract for Nelson Pope and Voorhees. So we had discussed it, but it didn't make it into the final contract with them.
I saw it. Gee, I saw it in the contract that they were gonna
Saw it
update.
in the- I think he's,
Yeah, I think it was in the RFP, like the request for proposal, but in the final negotiation, I don't think it made it into the contract when we looked over it, the signed version. Which we'll put it out and we'll get someone to go
Okay,
over it.
great, that's great, great. That's important.
Yes, I agree. Okay, so the next chapter I would like to do is the housing chapter, and I'd like to do it as a group, and hold on, I'm just pulling out my timeline.
This is for the next meeting.
What I'm gonna put out for, well, the next meeting. Yes, I'll have it out to you so that we can go over it for the next meeting and discuss it. I'm hoping to have the census data, the information that you guys are looking for the economic development, to create that baseline data for everybody to see. So I want to do the growth and change chapter and the housing chapter. Those are the two things I'd like to focus on. And that'll be for the November 28th meeting.
You know, maybe it would be important to have the basic essential fundamental data first, because that drives the composition. That will drive conclusions, which will, and questions mostly, which will drive the organization of the chapter. So, I mean, I think it's a little bit maybe backwards to do it another way. Otherwise, how are we going to organize our chapter on housing without having the basic, you know, sets of data before us?
well, we kind of have a nice outline already.
I haven't looked at it recently.
You're talking about chapters 1 and 5, correct?
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Oh,
No, I'm
Yeah, I-
talking about how we organize the components of
no.
like a housing chapter.
No, I understood that. I just want to make sure I've got the right
Ah.
chapters marked.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, I was thinking chapters 1 and 5, because then after that, in sort of the new year, I was hoping we could dig into natural resources, waterways, recreation conservation areas, kind of do those together. And then end with the land use and zoning chapter and governance. And then we kind of would have gone through our chapters. So the housing and the growth and change chapter are sort of outliers. The rest of it kind of groups together well. It's shared information. And I'm figuring those chapters will kind of go through December. The data-based growth and change chapter and kind of the housing. Does that sound like a plan? Okay. All right, so our next meeting will be, I'll send out an email about the public workshop on November 18th, and that'll be to go over all the chapters that we've talked about today. So economic development, utilities, community services, public health and human services, and anything else before that that we've already gone over. So anything the public wants to discuss with those chapters, that'll be for that November 18th public workshop. And then our meeting on November 28th, we'll be discussing the census data, the growth and change chapter, which is chapter 1, subsection B is how I have it listed, and then chapter 5, housing. So that'll kind of be the 11/28 conversation, and then that'll probably carry over also to our December meeting on 12/19. Just because I figured there'll be a lot to discuss. And it's the holiday season and people are going to be busy. So you're going to want some time on it. Okay. And that's all I have. Does anyone have anything that they'd like to?
Is the public allowed to speak?
Oh yeah, I was just going to see if the committee members had anything else to add, and then I was going to open it up to the floor.
Meg,
John?
just the 18th date, because it's so close to Thanksgiving, I'm wondering if we just won't have very many people involved in that because people might be leaving already. I don't know, but
Yeah.
I know this is a problematic time of year. Would it move it back a couple days? I don't know what would be best for anybody, but I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know.
So that was part of the problem that we were having, is that the calendar is pretty full. So November 10th was a day that had open. That's a Thursday. I was trying to keep it on a Monday when people would be here, but the only open Monday is that the 21st for Thanksgiving, that Thanksgiving week, which was really just not conducive. Because every other Monday has a meeting already. So it was really kind of that Friday, the 18th was open. Otherwise, the Friday before that was Veterans Day, so everything's closed, or it was the 25th, which is like Thanksgiving. So it was kind of tricky.
I mean, Monday the 21st, aren't people around? I mean, maybe I have no life, but I'm here.
I don't think the 21st is, probably Friday, the 18th is better than the 21st.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
true. I would, oh,
That's what,
no, I'm
that's
not
what
here.
I was thinking. That's why I lean towards Friday, the 18th. But I'll send out an email, and if you definitely can't make it, let me know, and I'll kind of figure out what the best option is. But that's a really packed month for evening meetings.
Well, I'll let
And
you
the
know
nice thing about a
now.
Friday is,
I'm out of the country.
with the Friday, you might get some weekend, people that come out traditionally every weekend.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was thinking people might come out for the Thanksgiving week, and they might come out early. So we may get extra people that we wouldn't normally get.
Right.
So we'll see.
And there's
Especially if we advertise it well. You know,
Mhm.
people might try and really make a point of being there on that Friday, but we have to get the word out, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good.
Okay. All right. Kim, you had a question or comment?
Yeah, I sent that letter in that you talked about earlier, Meg, and I just wanted to say a couple things about it. Yes, it was previously sent to the town board, but I wasn't sure that this committee had seen it. And, before I say anything else, just another great meeting, you guys, a lot of hard work, a lot of depth and breadth of knowledge on many, many town aspects. I always learn something when I come listen to you guys. But one of the reasons that we resent the letter is because a few things have happened that highlight the importance of what I'm calling a holistic plan for the island's water, both groundwater and surface water. And Meg, you did refer me back to the ground and surface water management plan of 2020 on the website, which is a document replete with important data. And I wanted to make it clear that my letter does not necessarily ask for someone to redo all the important data that has been collected and to which the letter refers. However, the ground and surface water management plan document does say within the document that an organization outside the town and committee structure should be engaged to assist the town with its planning and implementation. And that is a quote, and that is actually what I am asking for. My letter refers to two specific things that have come up between April, when I first sent it, and today. One of them is a request by Gardner's Bay Country Club to double its annual water use, which would be an additional 6 million gallons annually. The other is a town proposal for a wastewater treatment facility that could have a negative impact on surface waters. That was first brought up a few months ago when the facility was going to be located at Clenawickus. It has since been moved to another location, and I think there is some question that should be explored as to whether that could have an impact on surface waters.
Is that
Finally,
part of the comprehensive plan though?
I'm talking about a holistic plan, and BJ, what I'm trying to do is give some evidence that because this is such an important topic, it might be a good idea to get an outside organization or an independent expert. And my final point, and then I will shut up, is that if you feel that it would be helpful to your committee and to the town to have funds raised by outside the town and its committee structure, I would like time to try to do that. That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Pam.
Yeah.
I think that as an action item in the plan, we can incorporate the use of outside resources for maybe as part of the facilities master plan or something like that. And just kind of, I'll think about how to word it in an action item. We do have a group on retainer now for SECRA reviews and things of that nature. So that will help with some of the environmental studies. But I'll definitely look into your recommendation and see how we can include it.
Okay, and just on that point about the consultants, I'm a little confused as to what the Nelson Pope Voorhees RFP covers versus what the PW Grosser contract covers. And I think that might also be, another piece of data that would help all the people that are concerned about this holistic plan for the water to see. So I would look forward to knowing the difference between those two consultants.
Okay, yeah, they're actually doing completely different things. So Nelson Pope and Voorhees, their only job was essentially to do the housing plan, to help with the housing plan. PW Grosser is just, we're just using them for SECRA and environmental reviews. So they're two very separate mandates.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
And thanks again for everybody, coming to these meetings and doing all the work that you do in order to be so knowledgeable. As I said, I learn a lot every time, I attend, and it's a pleasure to see you all. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Anybody else from the community? you're muted, so if you're talking, we can't hear you. And I don't see any hands.
Good.
So,
Have a good night, everybody.
yep, I was gonna say, make a motion to adieu.
Motion, second.
All right, all in favor? Good night.
Eh.